All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and I'm joined by...
How's everything, Brandon? How you been?
I'm good, man. How you doing? How you doing? Happy Saturday.
The vaccinated life, baby. I went out yesterday. I was like, anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully all you guys are doing well out there. Hopefully you enjoyed your Memorial Day weekend last week. As I mentioned to you guys last week, it was a little gray here in DC, a little gray and rainy and cold. So didn't really get to enjoy being, out and about and enjoying the weather.
Did you go to your indoor barbecue?
Weather.
Did you have your indoor barbecue?
Yeah, there you
Basically,
go.
Right?
Indoor, man. Essentially, for sure. So as you guys well know, here on Saturdays, we typically do our show known only as This Week in Review, in which we, cover many of the stories that have made the rounds in the entertainment industry. All types of things, whether it's, business related matters, casting announcements, announcements of new films, things of that nature. Before we get into many of the stories that have, made their way around online and in all of our news cycles, just a couple of minutes that I want to get into just as reminders. So if you enjoy many of these videos that we do, of course, in terms of social media, you can find us on Twitter at Move and Shake UNLTD. You can also find us on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited. And to add another tidbit there, you can also support us on Patreon. So let me pull that up as well. Having a little glitch here. Here we go. Let's see. There we go. Yay, technology. So, but yes, you can find us. You can find us on Patreon as well. You can find the link down there. We do have some cool perks for those of you that want to be Patreon supporters. So be sure to check it out there at that link. And last but not least, if you want to keep track of many of the stories that are happening live as we're doing these shows, or even as you're watching it as an archive video later on, you can keep in touch with the conversations that we have on a lot of these stories with that hashtag TWNRMNSU. So that is This Week in Review at Movers and Shakers Unlimited. So let me put it up there for you guys. So yes, TWNRMNSU. So without further ado, as I said, we're going to hit the ground running because this show, unlike many others, is going to be pretty jam-packed because there were so many things that happened over the course of this week. As a matter of fact, some of it we didn't even have time to, cover over the course of this week. But with that being said, let's hop into the first story, which is something pretty cool out of the DCEU. We have a lot of films that are making their way this year out of the DC Comics, film adaptation world. We have Suicide Squad coming out this year, which I'm so much looking forward to. However, with that being said, just to tease some films that are still on the way, we actually had a picture that was put online by the director of the Flash film. So for those of you that are not aware, Michael Keaton is slated to be a part of the Flash film that is within that DCEU universe. So that if we're thinking DCEU, we're thinking of, Man of Steel, Justice League, those films. So let me put up that photo, which gives us a look at, that nostalgic feel of this look of Michael Keaton's 89? Wow, 89 Batman film.
Well, the first
and
movie
just a little history.
In the theater.
Yeah, a little history on that. Yeah, that film.
I think that was the second movie I probably saw in the movie theater.
I was going to say that film holds a special place in my heart as I'm pulling this up. because it was. Yeah, I know you were saying, you know, it was among the very first films. It was the first film I saw, guys. So that tells you, it gives you a little bit of detail in terms of, you know, my love of theaters. Hold on, give me one sec.
Probably the first experience I really remembered.
But yeah, like it gives you some detail of my love of movies and things of that ilk, because my very first film was a superhero film. You know, more I think about it, I was like, wow, that explains so much about, you know, my taste in movies,
Well, that was
especially
all
at,
they
you
had.
know,
They didn't have
especially
any.
at a young
Really
age.
didn't
But
have it.
here we go. Let me pull it up here. There we go. So in this photo from Andy Muschietti, who, you know, many of you, you know, may remember his helming talents from the world of horror, because he actually directed the first two It films. He put up this picture over the course of this week, which gave us a tease of the costume for Michael Keaton's Batman. And as you can see, it has that, you know, well-known iconography that we remember from that franchise and that iteration of Batman. But it has a little edge to it, because it looks like we have blood splattered on that. So it begs the question of what we might come to expect from this film. As I said, Andy has that background in horror. So, you know, how far are they going to push this Flash film begs a question that's based on this image. But in looking at this, Jerome, you know, what are your thoughts on the film and what we may come to expect?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just happy that they're going all out with this multiverse and just including everything into, you know, this new film. I mean, I know it's great to see, you know, Michael Keaton, like, you know, come back and just have that homage to him, because I mean, he was officially like the first theatrical Batman, and it's always good to bring that back. But yeah, I mean, it's like it looks like Batman is gonna, you know, he's seen some rough times since that movie, since those movies.
Clearly, right?
Clearly.
And
if Ben Affleck is supposed to come back too, I think he's supposed to be in this one too.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just think he's great.
Gonna be known.
Yo, maybe they'll have Christian Bale too. You never know. But I mean, who knows? But I just like the idea how, like, yeah, they can use the newer Batman and then have the older, you know, iteration. And yeah, I mean, obviously it sounds like, yeah, I mean, they're supposed to be doing it with a Flashpoint story or whatever, or something like that. So they're gonna, I'm sure, you know, include these different elements, and it's just great seeing that, because it gives them an excuse to do this. So just like with the new Spider-Man film, obviously they're copying Into the Spider-Verse. Who cares? Like, you get it. Like, that makes sense to bring all these people back. And it's like, if you're gonna do it, find a way to make logical, you know, cinematic storytelling sense of this. So, yeah, I mean, it's just nostalgic. I mean, that's the main thing I would say about this image. I mean, yeah, I mean, listening to Danny Elfman's score play over.
Oh man, I have it on my playlist, man. That's like one of my favorite scores ever.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that was so iconic.
Yeah.
It's so memorable and everything. So it's like, just remembering that, it's like, yeah, I mean, that has a special place in my heart, just going back to that Batman and just remembering that. So it's just cool how they're paying tribute to that. But yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I really doubt this movie's gonna be rated R, but whatever. I mean, if they could still make it a hard PG-13 and push it in that darker realm, that'll be interesting. And I'm just excited to see, like, who else. I mean, I was reading something about they're supposed to have maybe Supergirl in there, or who else? Yeah, some other characters too. So I don't know. I'm sure there's gonna be some other cameos. Who knows? But you know, with the Flash, you can do all sorts of things with time travel and cameos now. And I'm just excited that they're taking chances and doing this. It's really funny though, seeing seeing Michael Keaton, like, he's like, it's like he was destined to keep playing these playing variations of a flying mammal. I mean, from Batman, and then was it Birdman, and then he's playing Vulture, and it's like,
yeah, right.
He's still playing Vulture, and he's supposed to be in the Morbius movie. I mean, he's one of the few people who's getting to, still play both of these roles, and he's you know, they're not really upset about it. You know, people are like, oh, okay, hey, you can be in both, and whatever, you're Michael Keaton.
And I was gonna say, it's gonna be interesting. it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what they do with this film, because there is an opportunity for sure to do what was done in, I guess, do what was done in what was it, Days of Future Past. So like in Days of Future Past, you know, they had a way of in a very smooth and flashy way, they were able to kind of sweep, you know, The Last Stand under the rug and kind of like reset everything, do like a kind of a soft reboot per se of the franchise. So you know, with a lot of the other films that are on the way, they can potentially use this film as a jumping off point to or a platform, whatever, however way you want to coin it, as a way to do a soft reboot of their entire DCEU. I don't know what your thoughts on that, but at least from thinking of what they could do with, you know, time travel and going back and resetting things. Might be a opportunity to do that, or they can, you know, Ben and Jerry and decide, okay, we don't like this, so this universe doesn't exist anymore. Only this universe of these characters that we like are going to be a part of it. These actors from these prior universes, you know, we're going to do. So
yeah, but then where does the Batman fit into this? Because it's like, I mean, that's this is the thing though. It's like I think that's okay for certain elements. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do another Justice League. I hope they do. I hope they just do the same thing with the director's cut and be like, just another 4-hour movie, and then all right, boom, there you're good. But yeah, I don't know. Ben Affleck, how many more times is he gonna play Batman? Is he really, you know? It depends on these deals and the relationships they have with the filmmakers. I mean, what else? I don't know. I mean, I want to still see another Wonder Woman, but I know the last one didn't get the best reception. And the same with the Suicide Squad. Like, you're still keeping a lot of those actors in well, at least a few of them in the sequel. But they're still kind of rebooting it. I mean, they called it the Suicide Squad. I mean, they didn't even give it a number. You know, that just tells you everything you need to know. But I don't know. I still like Shazam. I mean, Aquaman is cool. Like, you know, like some of these characters you still want to put in there. So it's like, you know, I guess you could switch up Batman a little bit or switch up some of these characters. But I don't know. I feel like I don't want them to completely change everything and make, you know, I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, they're supposed to do this Black Superman film too. And I heard, I mean, what is it? I was hearing they were thinking of Regina King directing that too. I don't know. Like, I was hearing some rumors about that too. But
well, I was going to say it's interesting. I was going to say it's interesting that you bring up Suicide Squad. I know I was just mentioning it before, but and you bringing it up again, and us already knowing, and those of you out there, if you're not aware, Suicide Squad is going to be rated R. It begs the question. It begs the question of, okay, is that, you know, seeing that this film is still, you know, in the process of being made, you know, they could always, just as they've done with other films, shoot it under the intention of being rated R. Yeah. And, you know, if necessary, cut stuff out in a theatrical cut to make it PG-13. So, you know, in looking at this image and seeing, you know, how visceral it is, you know, with having, you know, the blood there on the symbol of Batman. If Suicide Squad does, you know, gangbusters at the box office, you know, they may potentially kind of run with, we'll see. I have no proof of this, but they may try to run with the Flash being rated R. They may try to go that route. Because as I said, you know, the director already runs in that field, that wheelhouse anyway, of doing a lot of darker materials. So maybe if Suicide Squad does well, it will give him the license to decide, okay, yeah, we want to make this rated R. But they could always backtrack if, you know, Suicide Squad doesn't do as well as they anticipate, and he could still make it PG-13. So, you know, I don't know what your thoughts on that, because I've seen that happen a lot of times where, you know, with other franchises, I'm thinking of, like, I want to say Rambo and Die Hard.
No, but I think all the Rambos are rated R. I don't think any of those are. You're talking about Die Hard. Yeah, Live Free or Die Hard is PG-13. And I think they had an unrated version.
Yeah.
But Rambo, they made more violent. Like the last two.
You know what? I'm thinking what it was. No. I'm thinking of a different Stallone franchise. I'm thinking of Expendables because if I
Oh, the
recall,
last one
at
was
one point,
PG-13. Yeah, the last, but the other ones are
yeah,
R. Yeah, I don't
I
know why they did that,
recall,
but I
and
still
they
enjoy it.
did a back. If I remember correctly, you guys can correct me out there. Like I
They made
remember
it.
in one of the installments, they backtracked on it, and then they went back on it. Like I want to say it was part 2 where they tried to make it PG-13,
Oh, I
and
don't
then
know about
there
that.
was such an uproar. There was such an uproar about it that they ended up doing like digital violence after to make it back into a rated R film. I will look that up while we're doing up one of our
I
other
don't know.
stories,
I
but
mean,
I'm
I'm not sure
pretty
about
sure
that,
that's what something that they did.
but I will say it's like, yeah, I mean, they can. I think you can only really do that when it's like violence. Maybe you can cut stuff, but some of these movies are written where like it's R-rated because of like the language. So it's like you can't like I don't know. It's gonna be so a movie will be totally different if there's like if they're cursing a lot and like that's part of the character. It's like if Deadpool. I guess with Deadpool, I guess you could like bleep him out like if they do that in the MCU, but it's like that wouldn't make like that's his character. So it's like I don't know with Suicide Squad how much like bad like swearing there's gonna be, but I that might also be a factor. But yeah, if it's like violence related, you can always cut the bloodiness or the executions or
Yeah,
just
you can cut away or
but that's
just
the
not
only
showing
that's the
the
only
gore.
way. Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the only way they might get away with it. But I mean, who knows? I mean, if that's the case, I mean, but what doesn't make sense to me would be like, why would you do that with the Flash first when it's like they're doing the like out of all those characters, Batman should have R-rated movie. I mean, he's the darkest out of all of them. So it's like I don't know if the Batman movie is gonna be. I mean, he's such a big character. He's such a it's such a big franchise and moneymaker. But Joker did well. Of course, that was a separate type of film, but still, you know, to me, I would think that's the one you would try to experiment more with that. But yeah, hey, I'm down. I mean, I think it's always cool to experiment. Shoot, I would love to see an R-rated X-Men movie. I think that would be amazing. So, I mean, that's Marvel.
Or X-Force. Oh man, I
Oh,
know that
yeah,
X-Force has been in
hell yeah.
development
They're supposed to
forever.
do that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're supposed to make. Who knows what the hell they're gonna do? But
So, but yeah, all right. But we getting away from stuff. Let's get into our next story, guys. Kind of in a similar vein of talking about other franchises. There was some other cool news in the movie world, casting. Talking about casting. I know we were just talking about Michael Keaton. So it would appear in the story that we received this week out from Deadline is that Donnie Yen, the martial arts action icon, Donnie Yen, will be joining the franchise of John Wick. John, what should say? Let me correct that. So John Wick 4. So I know in this story, apparently that from this film that's coming out, I know right now I believe it's expected to come out in May of next year. So May 27th of next year. Still,
they spread it out then.
Yeah, they did spread it out.
It was coming,
at least right now, I would say
when Matrix 4 comes out.
Yeah, I would say it's expected. I know that's the PC term, expected. I know with everything that's been going on now with films being moved around, that things are constantly changing. But still, just the addition of having Donnie Yen join Keanu Reeves in John Wick 4. What are your thoughts on that, Jerome? Because I don't know about you, it excites me in terms of the possibilities of having both of them on screen together in any given action sequence.
Yeah, I mean specifically for this action franchise, because this whole series is based off of it's action choreography and obviously gunplay and how it's like an opera almost. Like to me, I'm amazed at how big John Wick has gotten, but like they keep it interesting and funny and ridiculous and action packed enough for people to come back. And I'm sure with the budget, it's not ridiculously over the top, but yeah, I mean he would add to it because he's choreographed so many movies. I mean, remember he was in Blade 2 and he choreographed that, and I was like, oh okay, yeah, I remember. But I haven't seen all of his films, but I know he's like badass in a lot of, he was in Rogue One and I know the latest XXX movie and the IP franchise or whatever, IP Man, Hitman, whatever. But yeah, he's great. It's always good seeing. I always like seeing people who are like masters of their craft, maybe behind the scenes, and then eventually transition, you know, maybe on screen as it, because it's like, you know, behind a lot of these action franchises, I mean, you have like, I think it was Don Liam and or Corey Yuen, like, or you know, or Wu Ping, you know, who did The Matrix. Like, some of these guys, like, I mean, that they make or break your film if it's a heavily you know, it's heavily influenced action film that's relying on martial arts choreography or stylistic action that's choreographed a certain way. So it's like, it's to me, it's always great seeing those people transition to the acting side or to become an action star themselves, because it's like they know what they're doing. And like, even like we were talking earlier about, like, you know, John Wick, the franchise, you know, with the director, how he was the choreographer before, so that's cool too. But also, like I was saying, they made it work well, because I've seen also the opposite, where it's like some films. There's been a film, you know, where you had the choreographer do a sequel to a movie and it was terrible, but I could act. So it's like, I always like to see people who know their craft, and they know how to make the proper transition to, you know, if it's directing or acting into a film, and like, you know, it fits. If everything, it's an organic transition. It's not just someone who just comes from the action world or just a sports star or whatever, and they don't respect the craft of acting or anything, and you're like, it doesn't work. It's just, you're just doing it because you're a martial artist or whatever.
I mean, I get it.
And that's what, and it's good to see that. It's good to see that with people like this who actually are like masters of their craft, and like, he's good. And in the movies I've seen him in, like, he's good. Like, he's not like.
Hey, well, I mean, if anyone, you know, wants to see, you know, just how ridiculous in terms of, you know, the talents that Donnie has as a in action, I mean, look no further than Ip Man. For anyone who loves like martial arts films, check out the Ip Man franchise. He is awesome in that franchise. Now, with that being said, you know, many of you, you know, might be wondering, okay, who is Donnie playing? You know, perhaps he's playing a villain, but no. Based in this story from Deadline, he's going to play an old friend of Reeves. Reeves is a John Wick character who shares the same history and many of the same enemies. So, you know, let me put this disclaimer up. Even though the film has been out for a while, but I always like to do this these spoilers up here, just for those who don't want to be spoiled. Now, last that we saw, and I'm assuming you're caught up, right, Jerome?
Of course, man.
For last we met John Wick in part 3. What was it, Parabellum?
Parabellum, yeah. He should be dead, but miraculously he's not.
Yeah, he miraculously fell off like the roof.
Got shot and fell down the roof.
Yeah, and he's now, like, you know, going after, you know, the entire essentially the entire like assassin underworld, because he was basically he's going to be teaming up against, and I'm brain farting on this character. Let me see if I can bring it up. Lawrence Fishburne, yeah. So in a very meta way,
it's Morpheus and another Matrix.
In a very meta way, Morpheus and Neo are going up against the entire like assassin underworld. Now that he is not just on the run from, I think I guess in the beginning of the third film, you know, he was you know, enemy number one,
whatever. Yeah,
but now, like, you know, all bets are off. He's coming after, you know, everybody, and everybody is after him. So
yeah, he can get help now. He can get help now.
No, but I'm saying, if you want anyone in your corner, you know, Donnie Yen is not a bad ally to have if you're going up against the entire, you know, assassin underworld. So I'm super excited to check out, you know, what is going to come of that, and how creative they get with some of the action sequences there. So I'm very much looking forward to what they do with that. All right. So moving forward to our next story here. If you recall, previously we were talking about the combining of Discovery and Warner Brothers. And over the course of this week, they gave us a look at what we could expect from that combined company. And that was, not too surprising. They just put the names together. It's going to be known as Warner Brothers Discovery. So let me put that up here, and I'll put up the.
I just hope that logo doesn't come up every time. I think it's just gonna be like the parent.
I'll put up the new logo. I know there was a story, and I believe it was in Variety, where they were talking about how unimpressed people were with this logo, and the effort that was put into making it. So here we are. Here is the logo for Warner Brothers Discovery. It was announced over this week by Discovery that this would be the logo that they're going with, and as I mentioned just now, the name would be known as Warner Brothers Discovery. So with that being said, Jerome, what are your thoughts on the name and this logo that they have settled on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else they would. I don't know. I thought they were sticking with Warner. They were going to stick with like Warner Media or something, and then, or like, I don't know. But I mean, what do you? I mean, it needs to be self-explanatory, so I get it. My thing is, I just think when they show the logo is like whatever. It's like I'm not like the biggest fan, but that's, to me, that's not the issue. It's just I'm curious. So when you see a movie or anything now, it's probably going to say like, instead of how they say a Time Warner company, it'll probably say a Warner Brothers Discovery company on top, but then you still probably see the Warner Brothers logo or HBO or whatever, or with Discovery. So I just feel like whatever branded entertainment that people are accustomed to seeing, and for like the serious film, like more serious films, or R-rated films compared to like G-rated or whatever, they should still go the way of like like how Disney does it. Like you never see Disney's logo before a Marvel movie, and that's purpose. That's on it's they do that on purpose, because it's like nobody wants to think of Mickey Mouse when you're watching a Marvel movie, but you see that it's a Walt Disney company. So, and like they're smart, they get that. The same with like Pixar or like Lucasfilm. You're not going to see Disney before, like people. They know, they're like, people are watching these franchises because of the built-in audience and the brand that's already been developed. You don't need Disney. Like you're going to see the Disney logo in front of like a Disney movie, like it's the Little Mermaid.
Hey, we were just talking about Batman, but I mean, whenever I think of Batman, just like, I'm assuming many people out there, when they think of Star Wars, they think of 20th Century Fox. When I think of Batman, I think of Warner Brothers. So
exactly, yeah. So I think they'll probably keep the same logos, but then it'll be interesting to look. I'm sure on the top, instead of it saying a Time Warner company, it'll probably say a Warner Brothers Discovery company, which would just be kind of weird, but whatever. I mean, but yeah, maybe you might see this logo at the very end of a movie or something, or like, I don't know, because if that's what they use for everything, it's gonna be kind of weird. That's just my opinion. But whatever. I mean, they gotta do what they gotta do.
And I was going to say, to talk further on the story, that was the announcement made by Discovery, the chief of Discovery, David Zaslav. And I apologize if I'm butchering your name, man, but yes, David Zaslav. He was quoted as saying, Warner Brothers Discovery will aspire to be the most innovative, exciting, and fun place to tell stories in the world. That is what the company will be about. We love the new company's name because from what they have said, it represents the combination of Warner Brothers' fabled 100-year legacy of creative, authentic storytelling, and taking bold risks to bring the most amazing stories to life, with Discovery's global brand that has always stood brightly for integrity, innovation, and inspiration. Of course, he goes, further into, talking about the combining of these two entities. But, at the end of the day, I could really, I'll be pretty honest with you, is I could care less about the logo as long as we get, awesome content out of the combining of these two entities. Then I'll be happy. You know, they could call it Warner Brothers Discovery, Warner Brothers D. Like, I don't care, as long at the end product.
Oh
As
yeah,
long
of
as the
course,
end
of
product
course.
is what it should be, because you know I expect so much out of our out of the content that we get out of Warner Brothers. I mean, gosh, I mean, we were just joking about the meta element of Morpheus and Neo, the Matrix, Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So like, at the end of the day, as long as we have great content and great product that comes out of it, I'll be happy. I'm not gonna really stress on what a logo looks like or what the name is, as long as what they produce is awesome. I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I will say though, I am a little shocked that they didn't call it Warner Media Discovery, because Warner Brothers is not the same as HBO. You know what I'm saying? Like, Warner Brothers movies, that's one aspect of the company, but HBO is a totally different. You know what I'm saying? You don't see Warner Brothers in front of HBO content, and like, that's a brand in itself. So that's to me, that's kind of interesting, because like I said, it never said, oh, you saw Warner Brothers Pictures logos before, and it would say a Time Warner, because that's Time and Warner, combined. Like, so that's the parent company. But yeah, that was kind of interesting to see that, because these are separate. There's separate brands within the Warner Media umbrella. So and even with HBO Max, if technically, like, you have HBO, like, even when I was just looking at HBO, they're like, do you want to watch HBO or HBO Max? So it's like they added extra stuff into HBO Max, and then you have HBO that's been around, and then you have Warner Brothers, and then there was, well, before, you used to have like those offshoots of, there's like other networks. I think like when Ted Turner had it back in the day, there was you had what was it? It was like TBS. I don't even know how like that still works, but like, those are totally differently. Yeah, I mean, you have like, of course, you have the news network. You have CNN. I mean, they'll say Time Warner Media. So it's funny. Even look at CNN. Like, I bet you'll start seeing, it'll say Warner Brothers Discovery Company or whatever. But to me, that's still laughable, because you're making it sound like everything is either Warner Brothers or Discovery, when it really is Warner Media. So, but I mean, it is what it. It's not, like you said, it's not the end of the world, but it's just the wording is kind of hilarious to me, because I'm like, all those brands aren't really under Warner Brothers. It's like they're kind of separate. You know what I'm saying? Like, one was a movie studio, one's like a premium TV network, pay for cable pay network, and then they all got acquired. They all merged under a singular umbrella, and they're trying to make sense. It just sounds weird when you're trying to say everything's under Warner Brothers, when it's not. Everything isn't like going to be a Warner Brothers driven like film. Like, that's when I think Warner Brothers, I think of movies. So, but whatever. I mean, as long as the stuff is good, that's all that matters. But it's just different. It's just kind of weird.
No, I hear you. So with that being said, guys, I know we were just talking about Warner Brothers and Discovery, or say Warner Brothers Discovery, newly minted name. But we're going to switch gears over to a story that comes out of Variety, an exclusive from Variety, in which Sony Pictures is launching a diverse writers program. So let me pull this up. So yes, as I said in this story from Variety, Sony Pictures will link 16 aspiring scribes with industry professionals and mentors for their six-week diverse writers program. Basically, it will allow these writers to have discussions with a number of creative executives, producers, seasoned writers, and showrunners, with a focus of being able to hone their skills in writing scripted television. They will also network with industry professionals and be assigned a mentor from Sony Pictures television pool of producers and scribes. Now I can continue on with this, but just with considering the opportunity that this program looks to provide for aspiring writers, what are your thoughts on Jerome, of Sony Pictures having a program like this?
No, I mean, I think it's great. I mean, I know people who've been through some of these programs, and they're writing. Like, I have a friend right now. Well, she's been in the game for a while, and she's going to be on the writing staff of a Netflix show. But she went through a whole bunch of programs like this, and it took some time, but and she got an agent through that, so it's great. I mean, a lot of these studios are doing this. I have another friend who, my friend Pete Chapman, you probably see stuff that he's directed. He did, he's directed episodes of Blackish, Mixedish, Grownish, Silicon Valley, whatever. He went through several of those directing programs, and you get to, a lot of times you get to shadow people, you get to network, and you make those connections so then you can transition. And they're very helpful. I mean, it's great that they're doing this. I feel like they need to still do more, because some of them, I have heard from some people in the industry that like, every studio is trying to do this now just to like, fill the void of like, oh, we're doing something, but they can still do a lot more, because it's still, there isn't the percentage of like, I would say minorities or marginalized people in this country that haven't at least made an accurate representation of the actual percentage of people in Hollywood representing them, and the audiences that aren't being represented it's still not accurate to the actual percentage of people in the population of this country. So like if African Americans make up about 13% or 14% of the population, that's not the same percentage of that. It's not at that level yet in Hollywood, which it's growing, but it's still not there. And you can look at Hispanics, it's like, they're like the largest minority group, and percentage of filmmakers and writers and producers and actors.
And I was going to say, to speak,
it's not even close to the percentage. So there's a long way to go. So they're kind of doing this, and it's great that they're doing this, but there's still a big push to really do more. And it's not just above the line talent. They also need to do more for below the line talent too, because it's not just a director or a writer. You also have, there's DPs, there's gaffers, there's production design. There's a whole bunch of jobs that, are slowly becoming more diverse. And then not only that, what they really need? I feel like they really need something for executives, because that's the biggest problem. You could have everybody and your mama directing a project, writing a project, but they're not making the final decision to greenlight something. And the reason a lot of some of these projects are getting the reason why some of these are getting greenlit is because usually you'll have somebody who is maybe from that demographic who's in the room understanding the project. Like the perfect example is Judas and the Black Messiah. You could read the stories or listen to interviews. Shaka King, like him and the Lucas brothers, like they had Ryan Coogler, who had Black Panther, biggest movie like ever. One of the biggest movies ever. They still struggled having him on board, trying to get that movie greenlit. And because there was a Black executive at Warner Brothers who understood, and she wanted to make a Black Panther film, it got greenlit at the budget they needed. But that's a perfect example of like, wow, you could have the guy who directed like one of the biggest movies of all time, and you're still struggling to get a movie greenlit. And I think they need a program for that, where it's like, yo, we're gonna groom executives who can greenlight stuff, because that's where it's really lacking. But this is a start, but it's still, there's still a lot more that needs to be done. So that's my 2 cents.
And I was going to say, to speak further on that, it looks like, even in the story that they have. So as you can see, guys, we are super passionate when it comes to, providing, opportunity to minorities and having it open to everyone. But, to their credit, in this post, and I'll highlight it here, the quote that they have. We believe it's imperative that underrepresented voices have the opportunity to tell diverse and authentic stories that haven't been told before, and to develop into tomorrow's preeminent showrunners. Continuing on, they go on to say, and this is from Jeff Frost, the president of Sony Pictures Television Studios. So through this program, we are augmenting our continual efforts to provide emerging writers with entry point to share their unique perspectives with audience. So, I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Jerome. There's always a need to continue moving forward in the right direction. And it looks like, based on what they're saying, that's what the intention is. However, I will say, similar in the same wheelhouse to what you said is, actions speak louder than words. So, I love that this program is being made, but I am hopeful that we continue to get programs, like these, and continue to have it, just as you said, in other at all levels, whether it's writers, whether it's producers, whether it's composers.
Composers, that's another one. There's not that many.
We don't hear
barely any.
We don't hear that many.
There's barely any that are not white. I mean, I'm just saying you can't, but it's like, you don't have one good black composer, or how many female composers there are?
There's so many out there.
You don't even think about it.
There's so many out there. From experience and having an opportunity to chat with a lot of folks. There's so many talented folks out there in various disciplines. The only thing they need is the opportunity and the right platform. So I'm excited to hear, that this program is being done. But we gotta continue it, guys, in order to continue to go in the right direction of providing everyone with an opportunity. So with that being said, continuing within, another story.
Lastly,
go ahead. Wow, pull this up. Yeah.
Lastly, I'll just say it's not only because we care about it and we're like, it's the right thing to do. It makes economic sense. You look at the movies that are like the Fast and the Furious franchise. You can look at that. It doesn't matter if you like it or not.
So diverse.
There's 9 of them. Look how diverse people like seeing themselves on screen. Look at Black Panther, how much money it made. Look at Crazy Rich Asians, did really well. I'm not saying you have to only make a movie with a prime, majority African American or Asian, or like you could. There's so many different stories, and people are dying to see them. And it starts with the creators, the people who actually come. It starts with the people who actually can tell these stories, and then the person who can greenlight it, and it makes economic sense. These movies, Get Out did really well, and that was low budget. Like there's so many, like you can't even deny the numbers. So there's really no excuse, and it makes good financial sense. Like, if it's all about money, like don't you want to make more money? You're bringing in people into the theaters that probably wouldn't go to the theaters, but they're gonna see, they'll go if it's something they really want to see. Like. I mean,
for
that's
sure.
all I mean,
and I will close it with this because this is just exactly what you were talking about. I had relatives. Speaking of, a couple of years ago when Black Panther came out, I have relatives when they go to the movies. Like their idea of going to the movies is watching it on a premium channel on cable. They don't like going to like physically that experience of going to a movie theater. They'd rather be at home and watch their enjoy their movie going experience there. However, Black Panther was able to get many of those same relatives and many of those same friends to leave the comfort of their home and actually go out to a movie theater and watch it. Give me another example. Avengers Endgame. I had relatives who went to go see Avengers Endgame that they are not the standard moviegoer. Like they're the type to say, "Oh, I'll wait for it to come on TV. Oh, I'll wait for it to come on HBO, on Showtime, on Cinemax, on Stars, wherever." But because you have these monumental, iconic stories that show all types of faces from all types of backgrounds, and people are able to see, just as you said, able to see themselves and to see themselves in these larger than life roles and these iconic positions, royalty, superheroes, what have you. It gets people out of their homes and, gets them in those seats to see these films. So, that was all I will say on that. But yeah, again, like the more that we hopefully we get more of it. I'll just put it that way. Hopefully we get more.
Oh, don't worry, we're gonna get more because people are pressing them.
So all right. So speaking on the story, we were talking about the program on Sony. There is another story from Sony, and apparently in this story, let me pull it up. Also, a story from Deadline. There's a former Sony exec, Luke Scrace, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name. So Luke Scrace is launching a production company known as Golden Gate Studios with a first look deal with Sony Pictures. So to get into more detail about it, he's launching Golden Gate Studios, which will be a UK based production company, and it will focus on developing and producing British and European genre films, as well as it's stated here in the story, television series for the global market. The aim is to produce, a mix of both English as well as local language content. So with that being said, what are your thoughts, Jerome, of having this guy, Mr. Scrace, who was a former exec himself, leaving. From what I'm seeing here, he left Sony Pictures International and decided to launch a production company of his own.
It's funny. This happens a lot in the industry, I think, where like some people start off in certain roles and then maybe they want to do something else, but then they develop the relationships, they get into a certain part of the industry, and then they make that transition. So it's like, I mean, you could look at, I think it's what, Amy Pascal, who was she used to be the head of Sony. Like after she stopped, she wasn't in that role anymore. She was producing the Spider-Man movies. You know what I'm saying? So it's like some people are like, oh, I greenlight them, I'm the executive, blah, blah, blah. And then now I want to produce stuff. So it makes sense. I mean, you have agents doing this. It's a lot. It's a revolving door. It's almost like lobbyists going into the government and vice versa. I mean, it's true. It's a revolving door. And that's how you have those relationships. It's the same with Hollywood. And it's like, who's not going to help? Who wouldn't give this guy a position like that if you were an exec, especially in the international level? I mean, yeah, I would totally take those. You get those types of opportunities to be in those positions, and because if you have those relationships, it's easier to get stuff distributed or make those deals happen. And that's what this whole industry is about, relationships. So it makes sense. But it also shows how it's like, we're in a global time. Everything's global now. It's all about, the United States is not the only place that's producing stuff. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities everywhere. There's people delving into, like I said, the UK or, European content. There's a big market in India. That's another place. I mean, and Africa now. Africa has its own industry. Like there's people investing in that. We had stories before talking about Will Smith. He was getting involved with productions in, I think, Nigeria, like in a studio there. So that's how you have to think now, because it's like there's opportunities not only on a lot of different platforms, but also in different parts of the world. And this is the time to take advantage of it. I mean, for content creators, I hate using that because I don't feel like we're just that. Like, I mean, I'm a filmmaker too, but specifically filmmakers or people who produce like TV content or shows, and they're up and coming. Like, you have a lot of different places you can go to now, and this is just a testament to that, because that different markets have different needs, and they're going to need a lot of different types of content. So this is to me, it's just the future. It's just now what the future has become, and also how you have to think of your project now. It's like, where would it fit better? Maybe would it be better specifically here, or maybe overseas? There's a lot of different places to think about where you want to distribute your films or your TV shows, or whatever form of content it may be.
For sure. And just to give you, further background of case in point of, his body of work, his credits include, let's see, according to the article, Michael Winterbottom's Greed, Michael Keaton Jones is Our Ladies, which is coming out this year. We also have Curtain Call, which starring Colin Firth and Jimin Ardington, as well as The Dead Spit of Kelly, which is going to be directed by Ian Softly. So I mean, it makes sense to have kind of that arm or that platform to be able to further expand the content that you provide, not just here domestically, but internationally. as well. So, it'll be interesting to see, what comes of it. If anyone can, put together, this production company and have it flourish, it makes the most sense to have an ex-exec be able to launch that. So we will see, what comes of it. But I definitely found that it was an interesting story of someone who was at an exec level, but decided to say, hey, let's let me jumpstart a production company. Let me go in a different direction. So
let's also see if, I'm just curious, as an add on to that from our last conversation. Let's see if he helps bring diversity to the UK, because that's a big issue too. That's why you see like Idris Elba and all these actors, especially African Black British actors, coming here because they're like, I don't have as many opportunities. So that'd be interesting to watch and see how that plays out. But
for sure. And while we're also talking about a story that has international implications, I also wanted to pull up this story from Variety, in which they talk about the Tokyo government giving the okay to open their theaters. So let me pull this up real quick. All right. So yes, in this story from Variety, the Tokyo government, or say the Tokyo city government, has announced the relaxation of shutdown measures at cinemas and museums. And this is in spite of the government's recent extension of SOE, their current SOE to extend to June 20th. In a bunch of different prefectures, including Tokyo and Osaka. So this new policy is going to go into effect, or I should say it has gone into effect as of Tuesday, so as of June 1st, with restrictions on a number of patrons, opening hours, as well as the serving of alcoholic beverages. And all of this came about, as a result of the Japan Motion Picture Producers Association, who basically they issued a statement, basically, calling the government to permit the reopening of cinemas because they were able to demonstrate, or they were able to explain how there were no, infection clusters that had been tied back to cinemas. So considering the fact, and they even, explained it here in the article from Variety, that, Tokyo and Osaka account for like a large percent. So 35% of all theatrical revenues in Japan, considering that major chunk of revenue that those places provide to the movie industry and the box office potential there. What are your thoughts on that, Jerome, and what can be what can be done by having some of these restrictions loosened or relaxed?
I was just thinking, I was like, because I haven't been keeping up with all the Olympic stuff, but I'm like, I wonder if this has something to do with the Olympics too, because if there's a big push for it to still go on this summer. I know some people want to push it back to next year, but I think because the Olympic committees, they're going to benefit so much from it. I wonder if it had something to do with that. I mean, like I said, I haven't done the research, but it just makes me curious, because it's like, if you're going to have the Olympics, I mean, I know that's outdoors, but still, I wonder if there's some pushback and be like, hey, you guys have the Olympics, why can't theaters be open somewhere? I mean, you could have an argument there, because it's still a lot of people. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's great. I'm just curious also to know. It's interesting to see like some of the box office results just in general everywhere, because I'll tell you, just from, I was about to go to iPic right here in Bethesda over Memorial Day weekend. Or I was thinking, I was like, hey, maybe I'll go see a movie. And I was like, every show was sold out. I was like, this can't be. It was from Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. I was like, there's no way. I called them up and they're like, oh yeah, it's sold out because we're at 25% capacity. And that makes sense. It's like, all right, they didn't have as many seats in those theaters as opposed to like AMC, Tyson's, where there's bigger auditoriums. So I'm just curious, like with even these international openings, depending on the capacity limits or whatever, are movies, even though, and you know, with movie window times now decreasing, I wonder how much money they're actually making that they compared to what they would have made before, or is it still sufficient? You know, because maybe they'll just be playing in more theaters. I don't know, but it's definitely good for. I was just thinking about that because even here, as things are opening up, it's kind of the same situation. But it'll definitely help, obviously, with international box office, and you can see with these bigger movies being released or continuing to be released, there's an incentive now because now they can make some of their money back. Like, you know, F9 did well in China, and they released these movies early, you know, internationally first. And it's like, all right, now it's coming to the United States. There's an incentive to not have to push anything back anymore. So at least the bigger films, we'll see how Black Widow does. I mean, I'm sure that'll do well too, compared to people paying $30 to watch it on Disney Plus. But I'm gonna go see it in theaters
for sure. Well, I guess the thing that was interesting also in the story, another caveat of it, if you will, is that, you know, they were talking about, even though we have the SOE, and for those of you, state of emergency, they had an extension of that date for many of their places. They have another wrinkle in here where they talked about, okay, and this is probably played into, you know, the push to have all theaters open, is that it, just like in this article, it states that, you know, not all of Japan's cinemas have been closed during this, you know, SOE extension. So it says this SOE extension, which began on April 25th, and later extended on May 11th. They said on May 15th, Toho Cinemas, the country's largest chain, reopened 10 venues in 7 prefectures with social distancing and other antivirus measures in place. Also, some mini theaters. So for those of you out there, it looks, if we're thinking of like those art house movie theaters, any of those theaters that are, you know, showing a lot of independent films, it says that those mini theaters, art houses that screen the bulk of hundreds of Japanese indie films released annually, have defied SOE requests, claiming that obeying them would result in bankruptcy and permanent closure. So, you know, many of them, because there isn't, as it states here, there wasn't any force of law, that it's still up to them to you know, decide to follow it or not. So, like, you know, these SOE declarations do not have the force of law, making compliance voluntary rather than enforced with fines and other penalties. So perhaps because of that fact, that they, even though that they were putting these stipulations in place, they still didn't really have a way to, in essence, you know, enforce it. So at the end of the day, I'm sure in talking about we were talking about it just now, the Japan Motion Picture Producers Association, they were like, okay, like, you guys aren't following it anyway, or I should say, many people aren't following it anyway. So why do we even have this in place to begin with? Can we just relax it, since technically there are other theaters out there that are not necessarily following it anyway, since you don't really have it enforced by law. So
yeah, I guess so. Hey,
I don't know.
You can't beat them, join them, right?
So I mean, but I'm saying, at the end of the day, like, it'll be interesting, because I know we were talking about a lot of like big franchises earlier in some of our stories, and you know, you have a lot of them that rely not just on the domestic box office, but on the international box office too, so abroad. And with many of these, markets not being functioning, just as you said, not functioning at full capacity, that's going to have an impact across the board of, whether a lot of these IPs, a lot of these, franchises continue or not. Because, there have been cases where because, certain films that have come out of the US, because they had, a decent, international haul, they were still able to continue as a franchise because maybe they didn't do that well here domestically in the US, but they found an audience elsewhere abroad. And because of that, because of the impact of not just what was done here domestically, like maybe the modest success that it had domestically, but like the overwhelming response that it had internationally, it was able to allow certain franchises to continue and to have additional sequels and new installments. So it will definitely be interesting going forward how this continues to progress and how it continues to play out. But we shall see.
Or what'll happen, like you'll see, even if they know that if these studios know that the movies won't be able to do well internationally, they'll just sell it to like Netflix or Amazon, and they're like, cut our losses, let's get some money. I mean, we've seen that happen already several times. I mean, with what is it, the Come to America sequel? What else? I think, and also or they to promote their own service. Like I just saw the trailer for that Infinite movie. It actually looks pretty good with Mark Wahlberg. I was like, I would see that in theaters, but it's going to Paramount Plus. You gotta get it on Paramount Plus. So I mean, but you're gonna see more. Oh yeah, was it Trial of the Chicago 7? That was supposed to come out in theaters or whatever, and that got sold to Netflix. I mean, that's just how it is. You're gonna see more of that stuff. You're gonna see more of that if they don't think that they're gonna recoup a good amount of their money, and they might cut their losses. So it's a different. Yeah, we're in a different world right now. So it'll be interesting for filmmakers.
For sure. So while we're still staying in this wheelhouse of talking about movie theaters and a lot of our movie theaters reopening, we had another story and talking about Alamo Drafthouse. Many of you out there, probably at some point have had an opportunity to enjoy from wherever you are Alamo Drafthouse theaters. So in a story from Deadline, it was revealed. Let me.
A lot of movie theater stories in this episode.
A lot of movie stories.
I think this is the most we've done in one episode. We have like what? We have like
for sure. But it makes perfect sense just with things starting to reopen up. We're going to hear more stories of this. So in this story from Deadline, it has been it was in the story stated that the Alamo Drafthouse has emerged from bankruptcy and is opening 5 new theaters. It was announced this past Tuesday. It was in a quotation from, let's see, in a quote talking about the story. It was stated, as the country moves forward following the unprecedented 2020 pandemic and moviegoers are returning to theaters, Alamo Drafthouse Cinema is excited to announce its continued emergence and growth with the announcement of 5 new theaters. So yes, not only are they coming out of bankruptcy, but they are opening 5 new theaters. So you might be asking, where are these 5 theaters going to be? So it looks like we're going to have a location in Manhattan. So let me pull up this story so that way you guys can see it.
I think it's Manhattan, Staten Island,
Manhattan, and we also have some locations here in DC as well. So yes, let me get that up for you guys. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so yes, let me pull. Here we go. In the store, yes, from Deadline, we have a location here in Manhattan. So the company's highly anticipated first Manhattan location, Alamo Drafthouse, Lower Manhattan. It's going to be a 14-screen theater in the financial district at 28 Liberty, and is expected to open in the fall. It's going to be the home of the Press Room. So Press Room being the museum and letterpress, print shop, bar, and event space. There's also a Stanton Island Theater still in development, so that should be interesting. And then just scrolling down, right here at home, here on the East Coast in DC, there's going to be 2 locations. So one located in DC proper, so a non-screen theater located at Bronze Street in Northeast Washington, D.C. That's going to be opening later this year in the winter. And also one that will be opening in Crystal City, so in Arlington, Virginia, that will be planned to open in the spring of 2022. And then last but not least, also one that we have here in St. Louis. So the first theater in St. Louis, located in the upcoming City Foundry St. Louis development or say the STL development in the city of Midtown District. It will be a 10-screen theater from franchise partner St. Louis Alamo Movies, and it's expected to also open in the spring of 2022. So you hear news of this of Alamo founding its way out of bankruptcy and opening these new theaters. What are your thoughts on that and the potential going forward, the future going forward?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, I've never been to Alamo Drafthouse. This will give me an excuse now, maybe.
Right.
I think it's important also for people to when you hear these stories about people filing for bankruptcy, it's like they filed Chapter 11, so that's restructuring their assets. That didn't mean they were just not paying their debt. So usually people do that, like, yeah, if they're having hard times, they'll restructure it or whatever. And this is a perfect example. They restructured it and they're coming back stronger. I know iPic had a similar situation and they're still up and running. That's a different story. But I'm just glad to see that some of these these brands, these theaters, specifically theaters, because like I said, you and me, we're movie guys. Like we watch stuff at home, but we like going to the theaters. And it's good to know that, yes, people have answered the question, do people want to go back to theaters? Yes, they do. And they've probably been dying to go to theaters because all this time stuck home in solitary confinement, house arrest, whatever you want to call it. But yes, and it's great. And it's showing that there's a demand and they're meeting the need. And expanding, that's even great. Like now, because I guess the Alamo Drafthouse that was around before was just in Virginia. So now having some in DC, or, I don't know. I never even thought about going to Alamo Drafthouse, even though I wanted to, but now it's like, hey, maybe I'll go support and check it out. But it's good to know that they're doing that. And, with other theaters not being able to make it, which I know will lead into our next story, it's good to know that there's still some that are surviving. It's good to have competition, even though you still have really 2 big companies running the whole, running the movie theater industry for the most part in the United States, but which is like AMC and Cineworld, which owns Regal. But it's good to know that theaters are surviving and they can come back strong or even stronger and take advantage of all these opportunities. What will be interesting though is the ones that maybe weren't doing as well or trying to thrive. Like how much are they able to improve their amenities? Because like for the most part, that's another reason why like some of these theaters can't survive if they weren't able to make those improvements or whatever. I'm not saying Alamo, but for whatever reason, if you're not able to keep up with some of the bigger chains who have made those improvements because they kind of were forced to. If you look at what iPic was doing, or even what ArcLight was doing before, will those survive? And then if they can't survive, will just one of these bigger theaters come in and swoop them up? And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I feel like we're at that point because if you can see some of these movies at home, at the same time, or maybe sooner, like you got to also give people an incentive to go to the movie theater, and that experience has to be amazing. It can't just be, oh, we just whatever. Nah, you got to like, it's like, if I'm not seeing it in IMAX, which obviously that's its own thing, and that's another company, they do well. You got to give me that full on experience. I want that iPick experience, or, you know, you see what AMC has done. Like they pretty much copy that. And I know Alamo Drafthouse, they've been in the game for a while doing that. Their own version.
And I was going to say, to speak further on Alamo Drafthouse, as you can see, there are two parts of this. It's a two-parter. So not only talking about the fact that they were able to emerge out of bankruptcy and are opening 5 theaters, just, you know, perfect timing, and talking about, you know, additional news that we were talking about with movie theaters. We also have a story with AMC as well, in which they are acquiring funds to acquire theaters. So Jerome, you want to?
Basically they were raising, I think they raised about like 230 million around that, and they're seeing the opportunities. I mean, it is what it is. This is what happens when, you know, if companies don't survive or whatever. Like it's obviously, you know, everyone's probably heard the news. It was so sad. It was sad at ArcLight cinemas or Pacific theaters, like they had to shut down basically. So, you know, the Cinerama Dome, and the historic Cinerama Dome in LA, like that's historical theater, like that, you know, they're all shut down, like they're done. I mean, so AMC has been smart, even though they had their own issues with funding. They raised some money, and now, you know, Adam, I think it's Aron, I don't know how to pronounce the last name, the CEO, he's like, they're having discussions about possibilities of but the lease agreements that those theaters had with these previous operators, they're talking to them to expand. So basically, it looks like there's a good chance, like, you know, there's an ArcLight Cinemas. I know that there's one in our area that's at Montgomery Mall. It's funny, I've never been to that one, even though I know it's nice because I've been to the one in LA, the Cinerama Dome. That was the first time I've been to those theaters when I lived in LA. But there's a good chance that one of Bethesda is probably going to be an AMC theater moving forward if this goes through. And wherever else there were ArcLight Cinemas. Maybe, like I said, maybe they're going to swoop in and, like I said, and buy that one in LA, which everyone has been begging. A lot of people in the film industry have been begging for either like a Netflix or a big company to do, but maybe just, you know, AMC will swoop in. But we'll see. If it will be interesting if they try to rebrand some of these historical sites, because like that's like its own, you know, people know that as a Cinerama Dome, the one in LA. So it's like, it'd be hard for me to think that anybody would want to like change that look or the name, because it's so, you know, there's a lot of nostalgia there. But it's just good to know that, you know, some of these are getting, at least, you know, if they weren't able to survive by themselves with their own company, like someone else will, you know, continue that legacy, and whatever, they'll get a rebrand. But AMC, they're not out of business. So whatever people were thinking, they're still finding a way to run strong. You know, it wasn't.
I mean, we were talking about this offline, and it's, you know, it's just amazing to see, you know, what a heel change it has been of, you know, things were not looking too great, you know, just what, 6-8 months ago, I guess 6 months to a year ago, things weren't looking that great, you know, with many of our pastimes that we enjoy, and major one of them being, you know, movie theaters. You know, one of my favorite pastimes, one of my favorite things to do, going to the movies. And look, I was just telling you, look what we are. We're looking at, you know, not just a lot of I guess SOEs being, you know, relaxed and having an opportunity of being able to get into the movie theaters, but the fact that we're actually getting more movie theaters, more potential places where we could see movies. So, you know, the possibilities of that are super, you know, exciting. You know, again, hopefully it's being done at a pace, and people are still continuing to be, you know, safe, of course, but still, you know, the prospect of being able to return to the movies, and also having additional choices in terms of movie theaters that you can visit to enjoy your movies, is exciting stuff, to say the least, for sure.
Oh yeah, one thing I will say, I do hope. I mean, obviously AMC raised money, but I do hope like a company like AMC like learns its lesson and like doesn't have as much debt, because that was the difference between AMC and like Cineworld, which owns Regal Cinemas. They purposely, remember, they actually shut down a whole bunch of their theaters because they're like, why are we wasting time having them open and no one's going to the theaters? AMC had a big issue because they're like, well, we have our theaters open, no one's coming in, but they had like a lot of debt too, and like that's really what kills a lot of these companies. Like, I'm sad that there's some restaurant. I mean, there's a lot of restaurants that's just done, and a lot of times it happens when like if you have a lot of debt and then times are tough, like it's tough to survive unless you're getting enough government assistance, like if it's the PPP program or whatever it was, you know, like any of those grant, like some people, they just couldn't continue. So, I mean, obviously I know that's another discussion, but it'd be interesting to see if like they're, you know, maybe they cut down like how much debt they had, because I mean, it just shows like when times aren't going well, it exposes a lot of of different companies, like business practices and how leveraged they've been. And if you're too leveraged and you don't have that backing, yeah, it shows. Because, you know, like IMAX, they were doing, I mean, they still were doing well overseas and like they're still fine, but yeah, it is what it is. But, you know, it really makes you wonder if like one of these big companies really can't make it. It's like we're gonna have to rely on some other big company to just buy them. Otherwise, we're not gonna have them in movie theaters. So
they won't be around.
It kind of sucks. It's like, damn, man. It's like, you know, you can't just rely on Netflix to buy every movie theater, you know, every business, or Amazon to buy every business. You know, it's like, which they probably would. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like that did do that, but I don't want to have to rely on some other company buying a company so something I like survives, you know. But
can still survive. Yeah.
it's stuck. But anyway, it's interesting times. Hopefully people, you know, are smarter now. But I don't know.
Well, I would just say in general, you know, hopefully, you know, folks are more, and I know I am, like, you know, these 18 months, you know, a lot of the things that you know, that we take for granted of being able to do, that we haven't had an opportunity to do, you know, going to the movies, you know, going to sporting events, you know, doing all types of things that you're like, oh, okay, today I'm going to go to the movies. Okay, today I'm going to go to, you know, see my favorite, you know, basketball team play, to see my favorite baseball team play, to see my favorite football team play.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those things we took for granted, and unfortunately, you know, you know, you don't really appreciate things until they're taken away. Exactly. And you're not able to do them. So hopefully now, you know, now that things are starting to become a bit more relaxed, that, you know, all of us are far more appreciative of those events. I mean, and just last week, you know, I was talking, you know, shout out to Emily Whitten and to Tom Zoller. Like, we were, you know, talking about the fact that cons are slowly starting to come back. You know, that's a thing that I enjoy doing, you know, year round, especially now during the summertime. You know, being able to go to conventions, they're a lot of fun, and it's great to see, you know, a lot of people that you otherwise don't see at any other time of the year. I mean, case in point, that's why I had those special edition episodes, guys, of Con Peeps, because, you know, it's such a major part of you know, my, you know, experience of going to cons, is, you know, enjoying it with, you know, others that I've, you know, had a opportunity to come to know, you know, over those years of attending, you know, those events. So yeah, just in general, just appreciation for a lot of things that we otherwise haven't had a chance to do. Hopefully we enjoy it a lot more and treasure it a lot more. But with that being said, I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And of course, as always, I am joined, I can talk today, guys. I'm joined by
Jerome Bourgeois, co-creator, co-founder, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Yeah, definitely check us out, you know, follow us, like us. You can follow and like the, you know, JW Bourgeois 21 on Twitter, JW Bourgeois on Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram for Movers Shakers Unlimited. Like us on Facebook, Move and Shake UNLTD. The same on Twitter. And obviously patreon.com/movershakers_unlimited if you want to support us and get some of the membership. We have different, membership perks, so we can continue creating this great content for you guys. And
there it is down below.
Yeah, you can see it right below. And yeah, we're working on some stuff about, as things are opening up, there's some things we're trying to, bring to you exclusively. So we'll definitely let you guys know. But yeah, I'll pass it back to you, Brandon.
For sure, yeah. And as I mentioned, again, hosting co-creator, Movers and Shakers Unlimited, Brandon Choi. Again, if you enjoy these episodes that we have of This Week in Review, make sure that you follow along in the conversation with us at TWNRMNSU. So that's This Week in Review, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And then also, make sure that you're around for many of, not just the exclusives, that we have, exclusive interviews. I try to make it a point to keep you guys aware of a lot of the cool conversations that we have with many of our guests that have come on the show, be they, actors, executives, writers, composers, what have you. They come from all walks of life and all types of disciplines, but, they have such fascinating stories in terms of, how they got into their field and especially about, their approach to some of the projects that we touch on and that we cover with them. So be on the lookout for those. Many of those you'll find on Facebook as live interviews. So, feel free to join us in those conversations and in those chats. We also have our breakdowns of certain cons here on YouTube that you're watching now. And This Week in Review, we also have right here on our YouTube channel. And then I was going to say, additionally, I want to also make an announcement about some of our shows. As you will know, we do have a couple of shows that are on hiatus right now, just by virtue of the show not being in a season or not having started its new season. But be on the lookout, as we will be doing some shows on Star Trek Discovery, on The Expanse, when both of those shows return. We had wrapped up, debriefed. What was it? Gosh, has it been that long? Last month yeah, it's been quite a while since that show has concluded. But I'm happy to announce that we will be continuing in that vein of doing coverage, or I should say, doing discussions and analysis of other MCU shows. So as you saw in the prior posts, we will be doing Emerald of Variance, which is our show that will be premiering on June 13th. And I know let's see, it looks like it's a little cut off there, but yes, on Sunday, June 13th, and it's going to be in our normal spot that we normally have our Marvel shows. So that is going to be at 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, in which we will be doing breakdowns of each of the episodes that premiered the Wednesday prior to our airing. So since the show will be premiering this week on June 9th, you can expect our first analysis and discussion on episode 1 of the Disney Plus MCU series on June 13th. And again, as I said, that will be at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or say, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there. And as always, see you soon. Peace.
Peace out.